Hello and welcome to a new episode of 12 Tone Warrior, the channel for weekend warrior keyboard players or anybody who does this kind of stuff over the weekend or anyone just interested in rock music and listening to it live. And I know it's been a little while, about a month since my last video, but I had a bit of technical problems. My laptop that I used to do all this crashed, and I had to have get a new one and then get my files recovered. So I have a lot of new ideas cooked up in my head in the interim. So there's a lot I want to talk about, but I figured to sort of re-kickstart this series of videos. Let's get back into the dig it in concept. Let's get back to the keyboard. After all, that's what this channel is all about. So I want to get back to the fundamentals of what I do and just kind of sharing that with you, seeing if you get something out of it, might learn something from it, or if you just like watching what keyboard players in classic rock bands or country bands do, how we play, how we go about this, and just having fun talking about that and other related subjects. So again, I have a lot of things I want to talk about. I wanted to talk about vintage versus new instruments and how that relates to keyboard players as well as guitarists. I wanted to talk about lots of concerts and that I've been to where I thought they were the most interesting ones, or where I met the players of the band, met fellow musicians at other shows in an interrelated way. So there's a lot I want to talk about, but anyway, I want to get back to the keyboard. So it's back to the dig it in concept. Let's dig into doing classic rock keyboards. So to begin this will be sort of in my episode 3, we did something like this. What I want this to be more about this time around is it's more about just the fundamentals of playing, and I'm going to share with you my sort of philosophy of how I go about it, and that I emphasize being very natural and comfortable about what you're doing, being very natural and comfortable with the keyboards, with playing piano, organ, other sounds, and sort of interweaving all that into your personal style. And that personal style you create is what you offer to the band. So let's start out first with I'm going to go from I picked 5 different tunes I want to do examples of, and I will do them sort of in order of easy to more difficult. So this first example, and again, before I even get into the songs, here, let me talk more about my basic approach to playing keyboards. Now, I grew up playing accordion as a child, and I learned to play this way with these buttons over here and the keyboard over here. And by the time I gave all that up, by the time I was in my early teens, I was more into listening to rock music. I kind of gave up the few years I had from the late 60s into the early 70s learning accordion. And I kind of forgot about the fact, I learned notation and how to read and write music, but I forgot all about that and became more of a listener, a rock listener. So when I first started getting into wanting to play keyboards, already by that time all these new developments have happened, and we moved sort of into the 80s. And so I had to learn a way to do this, and I sort of learned partially on my own, as well as hanging out with some college friends at Rutgers. And so basically, let's go with the idea that when I first got into this, there seemed to be a strong emphasis among certain musicians, and also in things I would read later on in internet forums, okay, that the idea is when you're playing in a band, you in fact, I agree with most of these commentators, that you should play more sparse. You're not playing a fully a song on your own like a stride pianist would. You're playing parts in a rock band. But there is still an approach to playing piano where you're playing full on what I call a comping style of playing. You're basically, take like a basic blues piece or something, you're going to do something that's just called comping over it, where you're basically playing, you know, like this is an E and you'll be like on E, you know. So on. You're just kind of loosely playing over the chord changes, but there's no particular lines you have to do. That's just called comping. And when you're comping on the piano, this idea developed in, I think it was more in the 80s, to always keep your left hand away from low notes. You should like never do that. And for basic piano and organ playing, that's just, I don't see that. I've always learned, you certainly don't get busy down there, but when you stay out of the bass player's sonic and notational territory. But you still, when you're comping, want to play full-on piano chords. You don't want to sort of always be limited to, the area up here. You want to get full range of the piano, but about in the right area. So you want to be able to voice out full chords. For instance, a C major, instead of just being, your basic root, or inverted chords, you want to voice them fully with some double octaves down here. So in the same way that when I mentioned, when I worked on the song by Jackson Browne, Doctor My Eyes, in episode 3, I was showing you this rocking action. This basic spread between your thumb and your pinky on your left hand, that's a very basic, it's not the only thing you would do with your left hand, but it's a very basic thing to do when you're comping, because it helps you to voice out these full sounding chords. And this bottom shouldn't really be getting in the bass player's way. You want to be sure, again, as I mentioned in previous episodes where I talk about sound, your band's sound, to make sure that you're turned down low on the low end on the mixer. That way any low sounds you create won't get in the bass player's way. And that, again, is a thing that became a point of contention in bands when synthesizers came about. They were able to create these low tones that bothered other members of the band, particularly the bass player. But when it was just keyboard, when it was just piano and organ and the basics like that, maybe some clav and some electric piano, those problems didn't really arise that much. I think synthesizers is what did it in and made that a common opinion going forward. But you should not shy away from playing on the low end. You should be voicing out full chords. They can go pretty low, like that. Because think about sounds you hear in the low end on classic rock recordings, like Boston, Foreplay, Long Time. You get that, that sound going on in there before the organ kicks back in again. There's plenty of examples where you hear low piano sounds, A Day in the Life. I mean, come on, right? So anyway, a basic spread that you would have during comping is just working around middle C, which is around here. You're going to have, some double octave bass down here and a chord up here that would be somewhere above middle C. And that way you get a balanced full spread of sound for your chords. So let's take that basic approach and work on, I chose a song called Have You Ever Seen the Rain? This is by Creedence Clearwater. So this is something that might fall into your classic rock repertoire. And this has both piano and organ on it. So once you know your basic chords and your inversions and everything, what you want to do is develop a comping style. So once you know the chords to the song, it's more about the chords. It's about how you approach it when you're playing it in a classic rock band. So you want to really just, there's nothing in the song that is requesting or asking of you to, unless they want you to play a solo. You don't really have one in here. You're just comping along, but you're putting appropriate sounds in at the right time. So when you're basically, in the song, you're going to comp and create a rhythm style, which is more than just playing, ringing out the chords like this. You have to get a rhythm. Now, for guitarists, what they do is they put their fingers on the frets for the right chord, and then they usually will strum. But you can't strum on a piano. What you have to do is develop a sort of syncopation between your left and right hand. So you can comp along to Have You Ever Seen the Rain, which I believe is in C. So you're going to be... just kind of dancing around with the notes in the chord and in the scale, and you're basically getting a full piano sound with your root notes in there and your upper notes. And syncopating is more like on your left hand. Again, in this simple style, we're not going to worry about other styles where you're not going to do on your left hand a just roots. You might have to play a chord like this, where you have like a pincer movement in your left hand, holding down like a 1 1/3, or a one of these, the rock and roll symbol. I don't know if I can get that right on this camera. This, okay, you're going to use that to hold down a chord, something like this, a 1 1/5. And then there, you can see it there. So you can see what I'm doing while holding something here. But for this generic, specific, comping, you don't have to worry about that. Play in a very natural, style around middle C, Now you can walk up to the F in this chorus. So, it's actually a lot easier to do than it looks. All you have to do is just know, and again, you can walk down like that along with the bass player without really being in the bass player's way, because you're just, these become part of voicing a chord. See that? With the B in the bass, but I still have a C up here. That's part of your harmonic content for this song. It makes it gives it a feel of suspension and release as you do that. So for the second verse of this, and you'll probably do this for a lot of songs, this is where I'll throw the organ in. And I think pretty much in the original recording, that's what it does. So after we come out of that first chorus, I'll come in with some organ here, just holding chords down. And so all you have to do here is just keep your left hand where it was, keep it down there, playing those root notes with your octaves, and just bring your upper hand up to the organ, and you don't have to worry about being up here, uncomfortably, playing high notes. You don't want them to get in the way of that organ pad. So what I would do is just play along like that. And with organ, you're not going to play percussively like you do on a piano. You're just going to hold down chords, really, with a little bit of variation in there. So let's play. Hit your Leslie pedal where you think it works. And that's really all there is to it. That's the structure of the song anyway. I didn't go over the whole arrangement and what goes where, but that's the essence of the song. Once you know that much, it's about your band putting the finishing touches on, get an ending, make sure everyone's on the verse and choruses at the right time, and you're there. So this is really, so again, in this song, there's no solos to play. All you have to do is fill in your part, either on piano or up there on the organ. Again, having a bit of taste for what you're doing. So first verse, keep it on the piano. First chorus, piano. Second verse, get up there on the organ. Second verse, keep it on the organ, and so on. And then if the song is extended, if your band likes to extend this song out a little, you can get back to the piano for a third, fourth verse, whatever you want to do there. And so something like this really just involves basic comping knowledge, and that just comes from being able to syncopate. And just using whatever, dancing around those notes, and you don't have to be playing the same exact notes that are on the record. And I don't think you would be able to. It's better just to be able to, you bring what you're learning, your piano style, to the band. Okay, so for this next example, I'm going to choose a song, Tom Petty, Breakdown. And I chose this one because we move over to another sound, electric piano. That makes it a little more interesting. And again, this one, you're really comping. There's no solos. You have to have that specific sound, which is Wurlitzer electric piano. You might be able to do it on a Rhodes sound, but I would aim for the Wurlitzer, which is this sound. And there are some signature phrases in here that you have to get. They're very easy, but they have to be there. Other than that, you're pretty much just comping. So for this one, usually the drummer will start out with a beat. Here, this is an A minor, and so there's your main chord for the song. Let me get myself back on. I'm having to switch between two different cameras here and learning to do this. So let me get back to the other camera, and we'll do Breakdown. Okay, so again, this is an A minor. Here we are, and basically after the initial drumming, you're coming in like this. Now that is pretty much what you should be playing. You can play it in your way. There can be a little bit of variation on there, but these hits, have to be there. The little in-betweens you can play around with. Now this part where it goes, that's very specific, this little phrase, which is basically, F and A. It's like F major, G major, A minor, up, only in ones and thirds. So, otherwise, this is a very simple one to play, and it's a fun one to play. All these songs classic rock songs that are fairly simple to play are really fun to do when you're up there with a band doing it and you have an appreciative audience. So they're a lot of fun just to groove along to and play. So back to this, you're just grooving. You wouldn't play that line. Yeah, let the guitarist do that. Now here's the chorus. Now, whether you're playing up here or you like to sometimes have that be low and getting a little bit close to the bass player's area, as again, if your keyboards are calibrated right and you're not pushing a lot of bass out of your part of the mixer, you'll be okay playing, even being down here, because you get that. What I like to hear on the Rhodes or electric piano, or in this case a Wurlitzer, I like to hear that low end bark sometimes. That's something you hear a lot on records, especially Steely Dan records. And if you want to hear that, that's fine to have that in there. So, but other than I think we basically covered the song. That's basically it. Is that these patterns I showed you. Okay, for this next one, we're going to do Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. What a fun tune. And it's a nice little ditty we add to our set. We like to especially have it in there during the summer or even during the winter when people are missing the summer. But our audience seems to like it. We enjoy playing it. So for this one, again, it's going to involve a lot of comping, but you do have a solo in here, and there's specific sounds you have to put in, especially, well, what I think on the original recording is either a marimba or a vibraphone, but I'm not sure. But it creates a sort of Caribbean or islandish or South Florida, something to do with that, being in the warm weather, drinking a margarita. So I tried various of those, like kind of tuned percussion sounds. None of them seemed to really work for me. But then I found a steel drum sound on my Kurzweil that I really like a lot. So I like using that as the substitute for whatever's on the recording. And again, it gives it that Caribbean flavor, because it really is a form of tuned percussion, all on a steel drum. In any case, and then on this one, I go for a Rhodes as the main piano, which I believe is also in the original song. So, let's go back to the other camera and let's get going on this one. All right, so Margaritaville opens up with a specific keyboard part you have to do, and it's not something you improvise. It's a specific thing, and it's basically you're playing in thirds like this. And then you can kind of end it like that if you want. So bringing in your bottom tones from, because most of the song you're going to be comping down here. So I just basically start out like this. So basically, you're comping along, and then when you get to the chorus, you're still comping. And then you have to do this. And those are the only arranged parts of the tunes, the specific parts that you have to play. That's not a solo and it's not a part of the comping. It's a specific line. That's really it for Margaritaville, other than the fact that there's a solo spot for you. So soloing, usually what you want to do is raise your which you can't see my volume control. It's up here somewhere. But you want to spike your volume up to 100% for the solo, and then improvise a solo. So I'll do that for the sake of this. My solo is going to be a little different every time I play it, and that's what makes it fun being part of a cover band doing these songs, is you don't have to play everything the way it's written out or the exact way that it was done in the studio, note per note, nor would you want to, nor would you have to drive yourself crazy. That's part of what it's being part of being a musician, is you get to vibe on the song, play the solo you want in your way, but it also needs to be tasteful and belong in there. It can't be something that you're suddenly going to go play a Moog synthesizer solo over. So anyway, let's do it. So for solos, usually I spike my volume and I just play in the right hand, sometimes accompanied with the left hand for certain kinds of phrases. So let's say I'm going into the solo. I messed it up a little there, but let's try that again. Sometimes coming up with a good solo isn't, you're not always inspired, so I'm gonna try that again. So starting from our reference point, which is a D. There, okay? So basically what I do is in the middle of the solo, when we're doing these chord changes, and then I play a specific line up there on the steel drums, and then back to my solo. Bring your volume back down to the 9 position from the 10 position it was at when I was soloing, and you're back into the song. And really, that's the essence of it. Okay, moving up the levels of difficulty. Well, not really difficulty, challenge. That's the way you should be looking at this. Nothing. I love what I do. This is all fun. It's more about challenge. Sometimes someone will throw a song at you. It's a little bit, whoa, like really I have to, but I get down, I dig in, I learn it, and before you know it, I can play it, and I'm kind of proud of myself, and proud for the band that the band can play it. So the next song I'm going to choose is Black Magic Woman by Santana. Now, I have already posted videos of us playing this, I think in its full version as well as in little bits and pieces. You can find it online too. Look up Sheep Dip online. You can find the full version of it, recorded about 3 years ago in our rehearsal studio, which is called the Spillmore East. Okay. All right. In any case, let's do this. Black Magic Woman. Now, what this one involves is we're switching instruments again. Our principal instrument for this is going to be the, let me switch it now, is the Hammond organ. And we're going to throw in some Rhodes. And I'm not sure on the original recording whether Greg Rowley is actually using a Rhodes in this little part we'll go over, or whether he's just using organ percussion. Hard to tell, but to make it simple for myself, I use a Rhodes on that, a Rhodes electric piano for this specific part. So, Black Magic Woman, you're comping on a lot of B3 organ. Mostly that's what you're doing on here, and there's no organ solo in this for you. It's all that goes to Carlos. That's Carlos's job, or whoever's in your band if you're not fortunate enough to have Carlos. That's their job. Your job is to do the organ parts. You don't have to worry about solos for this one, but there are key notes and phrases you have to learn, and that of course includes opening up the song. So let's get into it. Let's go to the other camera. Okay, so for Black Magic Woman, you, the keyboard player, are opening up the song, and in the case of the band I'm in, Sheep Dip, and probably in the cases of most local cover bands, it isn't always the drummer that's calling out the song. You don't have to have a set rule like that. In our case, it's usually whoever starts playing first establishes the rhythm, and it's very important as a musician to have a good sense of timing, because in this case I'm the one called on to initiate the song, and thus to come up with the rhythm in my head and count it out for the band. So it's a good exercise to be able to do that when you're on stage, is to be able to think of the song cooking away in your head before you count out the rhythm, to make sure you get the rhythm right, that you're not too fast or too slow. So in this case, I sort of am snapping my fingers or stomping my foot, thinking of how this goes. I got a black magic woman. I'm sort of thinking in the song in my head. I'm stomping my foot. Then I count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's basically what you play, is this simple organ arpeggio played just that way. That opens up the song. Then you hold down some chords. And so on, and then you're into it. So that's the essence of it. You're going to comp along in that sort of Latin syncopated style on your Hammond. Throw in your Leslie once in a while, like I did, when you think it's appropriate. And really, that's pretty much it, other than the fact that now, after that initial break, when you're still in the instrumental section, this is where I switch to electric piano. And so on. So I just do that part on electric piano. Got a black, and then we're back into the song. And then you're just playing that over and over in between vocals, guitar solos up until you get to the section that cooks, which is your and then basically you're gonna be going like this again. So I sort of shortened the whole song for you there, playing you the essentials, all the different parts you need to know that you would just repeat and repeat. Um, it's all really about getting this down right, is all about the arrangement. It's all about you getting together with your bandmates and working out the parts, because it's not one of these songs that is a simple, verse, chorus, second verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, and you're out. It doesn't work like that. It works in, even though it does have a verse and chorus, you have now a part that comes along that requires, a rhythm change, basically, and the band picks up speed and is doing an entirely different thing, a fast Latin rhythm towards the end. So that's again a more level of difficulty than the first three examples I gave. This involves lots of comping, but very specific parts that have to be played and an arrangement that you have to work out with your bandmates to get it right. Okay, we're going to have a bit of fun here for this last example, which is going to be, well, the tune I'm going to use is Leonard Skinner's I Know a Little. And this isn't really one of Leonard Skinner's better known to. It kind of is if you know their live album, One More for the Road, as well as a lot of live bootlegs and material that's been released over the years. Maybe you know this one. It's one of their better boogie tunes, but it is probably not one of their biggest hits. Okay, but it's a tune I chose because we play it, and what it really requires, and it's probably a higher level of difficulty than any of the ones I've done so far, but it's very loose. What it really needs, what the tune needs, is a good piano player. So someone coming in to play this for a band, you kind of have to already have that honky tonk style developed in order to make it sound good. This is the style, this is the way of being a classic rock keyboard player that's most linked to my keyboard hero, Chuck Leavell, who I talked about several episodes ago. If you watch my one where I watch some bands I play on my video screen and I give my commentary, I did one for the Allman Brothers, and that involved Chuck Leavell playing for the song Melissa. Not Melissa, Jessica by the Allman Brothers. He's my favorite classic rock sit-in keyboard player for bands, and like the Rolling Stones, for instance. So this song, any Leonard Skinner song really, but particularly ones that cook and boogie like this one does, because it's not like Sweet Home Alabama, which has more of a mid-tempo beat. This one cooks and it boogies. It's like, it's a real bar stomper, So for this one, you really have to have some honky tonk acrobatics brought in, and it's something you have to learn and develop on your own. And what I'll do is I'll show you a few techniques I've developed over the years, and it really hasn't been for that long of my keyboard playing life. I didn't, not until I joined a country band around 2013 did I start really trying to learn a lot of this stuff and do it right. And I did it again, but the way I've always done it, by listening and then trying it on your own and seeing if you can get the technique. And if you can't, I might watch a YouTube video that shows me what this new technique I didn't know about called overhand, underhand, and stuff like this, to make it sound like you're doing it all on one hand, but you're really not, and it makes it sound more impressive than it really is in difficulty to play. So I had to learn, I started learning more of these honky tonk techniques only really in the last decade or so, like just a little over a decade. And I've improved a lot as a player who can come in and play these kinds of things. So let's try this. Now, for this song, there is a solo for you to play. And it's all, other than that, it's all comping, but it's all comping in a really dynamic way. It's not a slow-paced song at all. You're going to be doing a lot of dancing around the keyboard, so to speak. So let's go to the other camera and give this one a shot. Okay, so this one is in the key of A, and basically it has an opening section where the guitarist is going to play a phrase that goes da 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 da, and then you're going to do that. You're going to be on the. There's a call and response. The guitar player calls. You're going to be part of the response. So it's da 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 da. Again, guitar. So that's basically that's the way I do it, is you just get in there with your chords and you play kind of in a, part of what I do is that slightly overhand, underhand thing where I get in there like this. Where you hammer away with, a couple fingers here and just get in there with another finger so you can play that chromatic note. Lots of slides, lots of, you get in there with some bass piano notes just before leading up to a chord. Those are all part of this playing style. And it's a lot of fun to do. So let me just continue on this. Let's say I'm playing a verse here. This is just comping along while the singer is singing. So your solo's coming up. During this slide, I will raise my volume. This is in slow motion. I raise my volume and go on with the solo. The most inspired solo that I could come up with, but that's it. Lower your volume again and you're back into the tune. Here's another little of these things called tuplets. So I showed you the overhand, the underhand hammering. Sometimes you can do these nice little tuplets. Another thing I do is this playing chromatically with the lower harmonic while the top note stays the same. All kinds of little things like that where you just dance around. That's all part of playing in that, kind of southern western honky tonk. The best that I do it. I know there's probably some experts out there that do it a lot better than me. But, hey, I'm playing. I try to fold in a lot of different things, styles, and have to sort of apportion them out. So I never became a honky tonk piano expert. So I can't claim to be that. But, hey, I've played this with a lot of with, other bands as well as my main band, and I've gotten some good comments. So I can't be all that bad at this. So anyway, for this style of playing, you need to practice a lot and practice playing in that honky tonk style until you develop some of those techniques, the trills, the tuplets, the overhand, underhand, to make doing this easier, because you're gonna have wrist problems after a while. But if you can, if you do it like this and get your other hand in there, because you don't need your hand down here in the bass when you're doing solos. So get your other hand involved to assist you in your soloing. Okay, so there you go. 5 different examples of how I tackle different kinds of keyboard parts that I do for my classic rock band, also the country band that I'm in. A lot of this applies, especially that southern style. Once you've learned that, you fold it right into your country rock or your country, and you're good to go. It'll make you a more appreciated keyboard player. So I hope, again, like I said, that you've learned something from this. I had a lot of fun doing it. We'll do more of this in the future. And for my next episode, we'll get back to maybe just doing a little more talking, and I'll have more of a properly developed video with little inserts of pictures and things that I do. But for this one, again, I hope you had a good time. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you on the next episode.